morning and welcome to part 5 of my mid-season player reviews. The next crop of players under the spotlight, Nick Newman, Zac Fisher, Luke Parks, Mark Pittonet and David Cunningham. Just before I get to those players, as I've been doing these reviews, I can't stop thinking about this external review of the whole football department and how much of an emphasis I'm placing on that in regards to these players. It's sort of difficult because there is now question marks associated to our development. Obviously, are these players being developed right? Are they being prepared right, both physically and emotionally and mentally? And the question marks now associated to game plans and systems, etc., etc. So I've got that at the back of my mind as I'm doing these. But at the same time, let's just have a look at these players from an individual point of view and see what they've produced thus far and maybe what they've got to offer moving forward in the second half of the season and obviously into next year as well. So let's start with Nick Newman. There's no doubt he's very well liked. He won the best clubman last year on the back of playing no football at all other than the first 2 games, ruptured that patella tendon, really nasty injury. The way he approached his rehab, he's obviously really highly regarded off-field. And I think for the most part, he's come back better than what I thought he would from a physical point of view. I personally have a lot of question marks still on a Nick Newman type, just because of the fact that we appear to have quite a few of these types of players, and how many of that type can we play in the back line at the same time? And what I mean by that is we've already got, Doc and we've got Sard and we've got Williams playing down there. And I thought that we were trying to groom a Tom Williamson type to maybe replace a Nick Newman, just maybe a little bit more aggressive, who can lock down, but also provide a little bit of rebound. But at this stage, Tom Williamson, who is contracted again next year until the end of 2022, has been a real disappointment this year and is now appears to be floundering in the VFL. And Nick Newman just comes pretty much, on the back of that horrific injury, plays some solid form in the VFL and he's come back straight back in. And there's no doubt if he can keep his body right, he probably plays the last 10 games. But him himself at the age of 28, he's out of contract himself at the end of the year. I'm not saying he's not going to get a contract for 2022, but what I'm saying is how many of these types, not necessarily great defensively, but provides a fair bit offensively. And how good is that offense? I think he does some really good things. We saw that those efforts against Hawthorn late in the game, goal-saving effort in the goal square. And we saw, he was really good up until he got injured against the West Coast Eagles in his 4th game back. So I don't know. I don't know for me how good he is. At 28 years of age, we need that experience. I mean, let's be honest though. His opportunities dried up at Sydney. And we needed him in 2019. We needed that. He got overtaken by the likes of Mills and Lloyd and they had Cunningham down there. So he's pretty much pushed out of Sydney. And now we've got him. And we also now have got Sard and we've got Williams and we've got Doherty. So how many of these types of blokes do we need? But obviously he's a good clubman. He'll obviously get a contract, I think, for next year. But, we want to start blooding other players possibly in those types of positions. Brody Kemp and obviously Liam Stocken needs to continue to have opportunities as well. I think for the most part, he's come back, as I said, physically come back really well. But it's a big watch for me. There's a big watch for me with Nick Newman, in the back half of this season with 10 games remaining. But I think for the most part, it's been a positive return considering that injury. We've seen ruptured patella injuries to the knee ruin careers before, and he's come back pretty well. Let's move on to Zac Fisher. I mean, it's just really frustrating, the fact that the last 2 years he really hasn't been able to get his body right. And for me, in the opening 2 rounds, they really wanted to blood him as that small forward. And that, for me, moving forward is really interesting as well, with possibly new assistant coaches in, or even, I don't know, even a new coach coming in. Will they see Zac Fisher just as a small forward or something else? It's almost like we've got him just penciled in as his small forward now. So are there other opportunities for him, or is that where he's going to play for the rest of his time at Carlton? We know he's contracted until 2023, so he's got plenty of time. I thought he looked really elusive and sharp in the opening 2 rounds of the season before he got injured. He didn't hit the scoreboard, which was disappointing. He only kicked the 1 goal. But he did. His goal assists were up. For me, at this stage, he's still a little bit one-sided. There's no doubt he makes us look better. He makes us look, I suppose, a lot more dangerous. But for me, he's just one-sided. And does he have that engine to actually get up higher in the ground and into the midfield mix on a regular basis? As I said, he's very creative and dangerous and unpredictable. And I think you need those types of players in your front half, particularly when you've got someone like Matt Owies, who's for me quite a clinical sort of small forward. It's good to have a point of difference with someone like Zac Fisher. I think from a defensive point of view, he's been a little bit disappointing. Only 3 tackles in his 3 games this season. And if you look at someone like a Jake Arks at Richmond, he's averaging like 3.5 tackles a game in a similar type position. That sort of high half, a small forward who can push up high. And I think he's got to lay those tackles and have that defensive pressure. And to lay only 3 tackles in those 3 games has been pretty poor. 22 years of age, still very young, played the 66 games. And as I said, there was always talk about maybe Fisher going back to Western Australia, but to have him locked away until the end of 2023, I think that's good. I think he's upside. I think he's got a fair bit of upside still. And I think we're all looking forward to see what Zac Fisher's got to offer in the second half of this season with 10 games remaining. Interesting one, Luke Parks. I think it's just, I suppose from a team point of view, I find it staggering to think that he's our only true debutant. And what I mean by true debutant, a first gamer in 2021. And we're sitting bottom 4 of the ladder. And you look at the Western Bulldogs and Melbourne, who are sitting 1 and 2, they've had more debutants than us. And you would think they're more stable. I find that staggering. I find it staggering that we have one player, one debutant, and it's a rookie too, who's just turned 20 years of age and's played a full year of senior football last year at Glenelg. We know his story, former Swans Academy player, overlooked by the Swans. Went and tried his luck over in South Australia, better opportunities to get drafted, and an outstanding year as an intercept defender for Glenelg in the SANFL. And we rookie listed him. I think what we've seen so far, it looks like a pretty good pickup. My concern is the height at 6'2". Is it tall enough to be a true third, that third tall defender? Is he just a little bit undersized? Time will only tell with that. His strengths are his reading of the play in the air and his intercept defending in terms of his marking. That's his real weapon and his real strengths. And we haven't seen that yet. What we have seen is what's impressed us, and I think this is the trademark of a player which I really like, is the fact that He's got a lot of courage and desperation, and his willingness to compete and get his hands dirty. And we've seen that. We've seen that in the games he's played so far. So he makes his debut in round one and impresses straight away with that. The Gold Coast game, he did some really good work. Not a big possession winner. And then he did his hammy and then was brought back straight back in. And he had that game against Essendon where he laid that tackle on Tipper. And it was okay against the Bulldogs. And then that horror game against Melbourne where he looked all at sea. And to be perfectly honest, he wasn't the only one in that back 6 or 7 who had a poor game against Melbourne. And he hasn't had another opportunity since. I think what I'd like to see from Luke Parks, I think it's a real positive. I think it's a big tick. Okay, so I'll put that on the table now. I personally would like to see him play the final 10 games of the season. I really would. I'd like to see him come in, okay, this week against the GWS Giants. And I would like to see him give him more attitude to play to his strengths. And I purely understand the focus would be to come in, okay, and be desperate. Beat your opponent and be desperate, okay, and compete and punch from behind, okay, and let's start off slow. But I'd actually like to see him come in now and go, okay, you've had a taste, okay, let's see you play to your strengths. And that is his intercept marking. He doesn't necessarily look like a great user, any penetration by foot, but I think he's relatively smart in the way he uses the ball. He doesn't take on more than he can chew. I am genuinely excited to see what he's got to offer moving forward because of his attitude and the fact that he seems to also have a trump card, which is that intercept marking, which is a great asset at this level. So it's been a big tick for me as far as Luke Parks goes. So really, really buoyed to see what he's got to offer for the rest of the season. I hope it comes as early as this week against the Giants. So we head now to Mark Pittonet. Pittonet. It is Pittonet. And another boy who's out of contract. His 2-year contract, come across from Hawthorn, know the story. When you think about Ruckman and you think about Mark Pittonet, you think, well, he's still relatively young, both in terms of games and age as a Ruckman. So he's just played the 32 games and just turned 25. So really, he's really only a baby. But he's got that little bit of experience now, and we've seen enough, to get a little bit of a sample size of Mark Pittonet, the Ruckman, now and moving forward. I think, so what is the upside? So what I mean by that, what is the upside? So he's played the 12 games this year, and he's played the 12 games, obviously, because Tom de Koning was injured at the start of the year. And really, we had no other Ruckman on the list. So he got his opportunity. I think he has been honest and serviceable. So it's a small tick. It's a small tick for Mark Pittonet. My concern is where is the wow factor? I think you like your Ruckman to be competitive and honest, but for me, they also need to have a bit of wow factor. He's 6th in the AFL for hit-outs, so he does get his hands on the ball, and his hit-outs to advantage, he's above average. Does that translate into clearances for us? Not necessarily, but how much is that about him? How much is that about our system around the ball? Okay, so let's put that on the table. But for me, everything else is a little bit really average. He wins a little bit of the ball, 9 disposals a game. It's okay, but not great. He can win some clearances, so he averages 3 clearances a game. But the big concern for me is the marking around the ground. I mean, he's had 3 contested marks for the whole year, and he basically averages 1 mark a game. Which is not good enough. For me, that is not good enough for a Ruckman who's had a lot of game time. He just does not mark the ball. and he does not get back down in the back half to take, defensive grabs in the last line. He doesn't necessarily go forward and clunk a grab, although he has kicked the 4 goals. We wouldn't call him, he doesn't particularly have great mobility. So I don't know. I don't know with Mark Pittonet. It's going to be interesting in the back half of this season to see how that all plays out in regards to him and TDK, whether they continue to go with both or just one. And now we recruit, a 210 centimetre former volleyball player, Alex Murkov, as now a development type player. I mean, Pittonet remains on the list. He remains on the list. He'll get another contract for next year. The interesting point is how long. Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? And really, I mean, what does it look like for him moving forward is the most interesting thing. But I think, look, I think he's been honest. He's been an honest contributor this season. I think we really saw his limitations. And I mean, Nick Naitanui will take a lot of ruckman to the cleaners, but Nick Naitanui had a field day against Mark Pittonet and Tom DeConning in our last game against the West Coast Eagles. Absolute field day. So let's get to our last player. And for me, this is a killer. This one is an absolute killer. And the more I think about it, the more it makes me feel a little bit just sick in the stomach. Both for him personally and for us as a team and a club moving forward. Now the uncertainty around David Cunningham. And to be overlooked at the start of the year and to have to really earn his spot, and a lot of question marks placed on him, with not so much his attitude, but whether he really wanted it. 6th season in the system, 24 years of age, just the 40 games under his belt, and a relatively high draft pick and shows a little bit. And to come in when he did against Brisbane and just look like a different player, not necessarily breaking the game open or absolutely dumb, it just look like a different player in terms of his attitude and his demeanour. I don't know, just something it seemed to have clicked for me just looking at him. His intensity, his aggression, I think he was outstanding against Essendon. 26 disposals and 2 goals, and his breakaway speed against the Western Bulldogs, and even in that game against in the game against, I think it was the Brisbane Lions when he came back, and then to do his ACL in the opening minutes of that game against Melbourne. And we know what he can give us, or what he could give us, and we were generally excited to see that point of difference. I mean, it's such a midfield which really lacks that, that breakaway speed, and he looks as classy as anyone. He looks as classy as anyone on our list. And I don't know. And to hear Ross Lyon, speak about him as well, that other clubs were into him, and just when Ross Lyon talks about a player, you sort of sit up and take notice as well. And I don't know. The thing is, he signs that contract in 2019, that 3-year contract, and we think, oh, Jesus Christ, he hasn't really done much, David Cunningham, to really deserve that. But I obviously saw something in him. But essentially, in that 3-year contract, he's going to play 16 games. 16 games. That's not a lot of footy. And now he's going to, his contract expires at the end of next year. We're hopefully getting back sometime next year. When that is, who knows? It's just so much uncertainty now, and it, for me, I'm just disappointed for him and for us. It is about us as well, isn't it? It's about us. And who comes in now, and who we got now who comes in and plays that role? If that's the way we want to go, like for the next 12 months, we don't have anyone, do we? We don't have anyone. And that, for me, is a bloody concern as well. And it's just fucking pure luck. Pure bad luck. It's almost like we're fucking tortured and cursed to lose David Cunningham in those circumstances when we could just finally see a change in attitude and demeanour. All right, that's 20 minutes up, and that's part 5 done and dusted, guys. I've got 2 more parts to go. I have, what have I got? 10 more players to do in this mid-season buy. If you like these videos, please subscribe, share them around. Tell me, what do you think? What do you think about these 4 players? Not Mark Murphy, Nick Newman, what have we got? Nick Newman, Zac Fisher, Luke Parks, Mark Pittonet, and now David Cunningham. Where do they fit? Okay, how have you seen their season? Where do they fit for the rest of the year and moving forward into 2022? It's bye for now. I'll see you tomorrow.